Order.
Sorry, it was slow.
Sorry, I'll start again. I would like to call a meeting of the Teton County, February meeting of the Teton County Library Board to order. Present via Zoom are Dale Barber, Sean Complarens, Grace Robertson, Peter Stalker, and Kip Roberson are on. We're waiting for Nina Lenz, but we're going to go ahead and start. I will make a motion to approve the February agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes of January 20th, 2022, our regular board meeting. I will also move to approve the minutes from the January 20th meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on those minutes? Thank you, Dale. My only discussion is thanks, Dale, for taking really doing a great job on that, and thanks to the staff for actually doing that as well. All in favor of the of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Hearing none. Thank you. Hi, Nina. You may want to unmute. Excuse me. It's time for public comment. We have no written correspondence. That's a correspondence report. So I would open it up to anybody who's online. Please use the function of waving on your on Zoom if you'd like to make a comment.
Seeing no hands so far.
Public comment going once. Public comment going twice. Thank you very much. All right. Going back to the orders that I got out of correspondence report. I did not see any correspondence this month in my.
There was none.
Which I think is great. I mean, I'm glad I think it's a sign that we're doing things so well. So that's good.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. Before we get to the consent agenda, I would like just to make a comment overall for everyone. As everyone can see from the director's report, this has been a month of extraordinary accomplishments from the library and its staff. They've been doing an awful lot of incredibly good work, moving a number of things forward, which we'll discuss later on this morning. One of the consequences of that was a somewhat delayed, we have our budgeting cycle, and the county has new software for budgeting, and that did not get to the library until the beginning of this month, with a deadline on our budget process for the end of this month to be submitted into the county. So staff has been really working incredibly hard to get ourselves in position to respond to the deadline for the county. Consequently, there have been several things that have been that have slipped a little bit, including some of the detailed financials that are not translated into the format that we normally have. And this is a 1 month aberration, and my hat's off to everyone for really working very hard to try and get all this pulled together. That being said, I would ask if anybody would like to pull anything from the consent agenda.
Yes.
Grace.
Okay. On the staff report, Stella and Kip.
Yes.
It just begged a lot of questions when I read about the natural gas usage item under future expenses.
Yes.
And I felt like I didn't have a perspective on what that information you gave us meant. What does it mean to the overall projections monthly? Is it something that's going to continue? Is it a significant number? And because we didn't have all the rest of the reports, I couldn't work on that number to figure that out. Can you help with perspective on that?
I'll go ahead. we just received a letter the other day. And I actually have not even gotten to talk to Rick about it. Because he was on vacation, so he just came back yesterday. In terms of, we have been seeing an increase in our gas bill. In terms of how long this increase will continue, I don't know. And then according to the letter, this was looking at a 12-month period. So my assumption is if our gas usage decreases, then maybe we would go back to this lower rate. I still need to also find out exactly what a therm is. So I'm sorry if that was a little bit confusing. But I just wanted to include that to show that we are having a base rate increase. And we have, yes, we have seen an increase in our gas bill recently. So
the increase is being driven both by increased usage and rates going up
Correct.
because of the increased usage, but is there also a general rate increase going on
yes,
in all of that?
yes.
Nationally, it's something like 50% rate increase. So everyone is being impacted. And you'll see in the budget proposal next week that we are accounting for an increase, an expected or anticipated continuation of that higher price.
Oh, okay. And then the usage increase, we've had a pretty mild winter. Is that just relative to what we use over the summer and all, or are we still using more gas because of increased circulation for COVID, or what's causing our usage increase?
That's a good question.
Grace, I can address a little bit of that. We were closed in January and February of last year. If you're looking at year-over-year numbers, we had a building that was heated but not used that much. So January actually was 8 degrees on average below our normal lows, and so we do have a temperature differential in January. Having talked with LVE recently on a number of other things not related to the library, they have a tiered structure for their rates. And there is one cutoff that we saw in this letter at 20,000 BTU, 20,000 therms. There's another cutoff that's an additional higher one for very high, for example, the rate that would be charged to the mountain resort. So they've got tiers, and they in essence charge higher rates to the highest users of their product.
Okay. So thank you for all of you tolerating my 101 on energy. But I am just one last question, the COVID. I know that we increased circulation, and are we planning in general to keep that level of circulation going? Is that the general plan?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. We want to keep the building as aerated and as safe as possible since COVID is not gone.
Did anybody want to pull anything else from the consent agenda? Yes, Dale.
Peter, since we didn't actually get to look at this, or I haven't seen it. I don't see, I think we should delay any approval of any of this, because I'm not comfortable approving something that I haven't seen. And I'm not sure how you want to go forward, but I just, like I say, I did send an email yesterday and ask a question, and they said, well, we might have it this morning, and I haven't seen it. So I'm thinking we should delay any sort of approval until we can review it.
I think that's a very good point. My plan was to suggest to us that we have a second board meeting, which we already is on the schedule for next week to talk about budget, that at that point in time, for everybody's edification, the way that the accounting is running right now is we submit everything through the county. It comes back in county format. The documents that are attached in the financial report are the county's expense report and revenue report, which then we have to convert back into a QuickBooks format, which is our normal reporting methodology. It just was impossible, given the time frame, to do that in time for this meeting. I'd like to push all of that reconciliation into next week's budget discussion as a preliminary item to include on that our next board meeting, if that's everybody's sentiment.
If everybody would look at the expense and revenue reports from the county this month, it's almost exclusively just payroll related, because we have yet in the new process to send any vouchers over for payment by the county yet. That will happen today. So we're waiting for Teton Accounting to also do some reconciliation for us, and that's been a delay as well. So we were told that we might receive the reconciliations from Teton this morning, but as of 8:42, we have not.
Is everybody
Okay.
comfortable? Is everybody comfortable with having the consent agenda on next week's meeting?
Should I make a motion, Peter?
I just want to make sure yeah, why don't you make a motion, then we can ask,
Okay.
have a discussion.
I move to delay review of the consent agenda until the special meeting scheduled for February 24th of the library board.
And I will second that motion. Is there any further, is there any discussion of it? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving forward, the director's report.
Sure. Again, I apologize. It's a long report. Some of the highlights, I think, really are the staffing hiring situation at the library. We have conducted a number of interviews specifically for the senior library assistant positions in youth services and in adult services. To date, we have re-examined the youth services position. We did find a candidate who was not able at this time to work full-time, which would have been 30 or more hours. So we did make the decision to hire a part-time library assistant for youth services, and that person has been extended an offer and has accepted and should start later this month. The expectation is that that person's schedule will change. They will like the job, and we will post and re-advertise it as a senior library assistant position at a later date. The adult services side, we are continuing to conduct interviews. We had one yesterday afternoon, and we have another one, I believe, next Wednesday. And I think we might have a good outcome from that. The library IT technician position, we have made an offer. We're waiting for an acceptance of that offer. And that leaves, let's see, part-time library assistants in Stephanie's circulation shop. She has hired another PTLA, which has brought us up to a level that we should be at this point. Though we now have someone who has resigned in that on that team, and so she will have another vacancy. I think sometime in March. Someone is leaving us to have a child. And that leaves the administrative assistant position, which Abigail's team over there at County Legal has hired someone new who we were trying to interview. So somewhere in County Legal, we were told. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. We have
That's
they
probably
can-
above my pay grade. I'll be really excited if we got someone though, because we've been short-staffed by half for our assistants.
Yes. I learned from Alyssa last week that the county is somewhere in the neighborhood of 36 vacancies right now.
Yeah.
The norm is 4 to 6, I believe she said. Anyway, we continue to recruit for the administrative assistant position. We have a call out for an interview with someone. Hopefully we will hear back from that candidate. And if you, again, I will make the plea, if you know anyone that wants to earn just a little more than Target is paying, we would welcome their application. Let's see what else. Library Housing Task Force we'll talk about later on the agenda. And a reminder to everyone on the screen today, the library will be closed from noon to 1:30 for a disability awareness in the workplace training. And many of you will be attending either in person or virtually. So if anyone is planning to come to the library between noon and 1:30, we will not be open. And what else is in my report? The library annual report, I think, is the thing that's probably worth highlighting. Normally in April, the library issues an annual report that's the last few years has been as an insert in the Jackson Hole News and Guide. Stella and Diana and I met and sort of discussed the purpose of the annual report, and we really didn't land on a good reason for it to come out in April. It's rather old information at that point. So we've decided that this year we would take the approach of doing a series of ads in the newspaper, probably in March, that would highlight what the library has accomplished in the last 5 years under its current strategic plan. And that lays the groundwork for the new strategic planning process that is starting this year and the new strategic plan to come. So we would like to highlight the library's successes over the last few years and just sort of lay the groundwork for the new. And this also gives us an opportunity to relook at how the annual reporting is done. We have to still have a discussion. Should it be a calendar year that we're reporting on, a fiscal year? And what format does that annual report take? The current format, not all that attractive in my opinion, and doesn't really speak to the successes of the library. So we're going to look at what other libraries do and come up with a new proposal for that. So that's the highlights from the report, and some of the things that are in there will also be discussed later on the agenda. So if anybody has any questions.
I think your strategic plan tie-in is just absolutely perfect for timing and appropriateness.
Hats off to Diana and Stella for coming up with that idea.
Really good.
We really need to add that it wasn't attractive in his opinion. Anyway.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I have one question for you, Kip. Where are we with, I know the state library opened up their statistical reporting. Do we have a deadline on putting our information in?
The deadline for the state is next Friday. We have everything completed except for 2 statistical data points that I need to get from IT. I've made the request. They are down to a team of 3. So I will hope we get the data by the time the deadline. Thankfully, the form gives us other ways we could possibly get the data. So I'm holding out, but we may have to take a different approach, but it will be submitted. And I may actually, if it's submitted before next Thursday, I may include it on the agenda for next week's meeting.
Thank you.
What is the cutoff on that for that report, Kip? Is it a calendar year report?
It's a fiscal year report, so it's actually, and I don't know why they're so behind, but we're actually reporting on July 2020 through June 2021 on that report. So it's really old.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any further questions for Kip on his report? Moving on, let's Maggie or Diana. Sorry. Oh, you know what? You're showing up as Maggie on the thing. I'm sorry, Diana.
Uh-oh.
Can't hear. Nope.
How about now?
There we go.
Okay.
Sorry
I
about
thought I clicked unmute. Okay. So yes, it says Maggie, but it's actually Diana. Thank you. We'll get that fixed for next time. So hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here at the Teton County Library Foundation. I know I've met quite a few of you already, and I really look forward to getting to know everybody and developing a really strong relationship, a working relationship, and look for ways that we can support the library optimally. And I really enjoyed the meet and greet that Karen hosted, our board member Karen Terra hosted at her home. That was a wonderful opportunity for me to meet the full board and also many of you. So I thank you for doing that and coming to that. I also want to thank the library staff. I had a wonderful orientation. Maggie coordinated some meetings with library staff managers as well as Kip. And so I had the great opportunity to do a full orientation and really get to know everyone in their departments and how the library operates. So I really appreciate the generosity of their time in doing that for me. And I've already had a couple of meetings with Kip, and I feel like they've been really productive. We've gotten to know each other a little bit and just learn about kind of how we, our vision for moving forward together and how we can be effective collaborators and really just keep the doors open for communicating with each other. So I appreciate that, Kip. That was really, it's a really encouraging start, I feel like. As Maggie has mentioned to me a couple of times, it's a little overwhelming at first. We keep joking that it feels like I'm drinking from a fire hose, starting week 3 now, but we've been going through so many things. So I'm learning and trying to catch up here. So a couple of things we want to share. Kip mentioned one of them, the annual report, knowing that the format's going to be changing for this year. We've been already discussing how we can take this as an opportunity perhaps for the foundation to find its own voice in terms of how we discuss our annual report to our donors and our board members, and talked about just some ways we could do that and how we can maybe highlight some of the programs and services that we support and share some of those successes and really speak to what matters to our donors. And maybe even we talked about featuring Kip and just having them get to know him even more through talking about just some of the new goings on at the library for 2021. We too agree that it feels a bit late as far as information, but we're just going to roll with it for this year, and maybe next year we talked about planning something a little bit sooner. So that is my update on the annual report. And then the housing task force, as Kip mentioned, he's going to go over that later on in the meeting. I will just share that for that first meeting. Again, it felt extremely productive, great conversation. Maggie and I were both present at that meeting, and kind of how we envision it at the foundation is that we're going to really be involved in this beginning of field work and research to try to identify the specific need and perhaps maybe look at what's most concerning to library staff. And then as that discussion needs to move forward to talk about potential solutions and resolutions, then we envision bringing on 1 or 2 members of our board in place, or we haven't yet quite figured out how, but we just think that would be a great way to move forward. Let's see, upcoming tri-board meeting, we look forward to hosting that, and again having more discussion with both the library board and of course the Friends. And we'll be sending out today another reminder to let us, let us receive your agenda items for consideration. And then we look forward to talking with everyone. And let's see, your budget. So again, yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing the library's priorities, how you want to move forward in terms of the budget, and of course helping us to plan for ours. And so we look forward to participating in your special meeting on the 24th and attending that. And I think those are pretty much the highlights of my report. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Just welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter.
Great to have you.
Thank you.
Okay. Friends report. Thank you, Diana. Virginia, are you going to?
Thank you. I know in the you can hear me, I hope.
Yes.
Okay. In our distributed materials that you get in your pre-board package, you saw the Lori's report. We too are very happy with these new hires that Kip has described, and we're certainly welcome Diana to the foundation. We look forward to working with everybody. I might several friends will be at the training today, including myself. And I would just emphasize that we have another staff appreciation that's going on December 4th. So we are quite involved in trying to show the staff just how much we appreciate all that they are doing. As you stated earlier in your comments, Peter, it's just remarkable how hard everybody's working. So we want to appreciate them, and we'll have that going on at the library on the 4th. Thank you.
Virginia, how are you guys doing in terms of your recruiting for your group?
We have 3 more people working with us. So we're now up to 11, I think. So we're doing well, but we have certainly decided to just continuously recruit. We've changed some of our parameters to make it possible to incorporate people year round, not just at our end of the year change into the new fiscal year. So we have more flexibility now about bringing people on board, but thank you for asking. And I think we're doing quite well.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Virginia?
Peter?
No.
Can I just say something before?
Yeah, please.
About the director's report? In my comments about the annual report, I think I may have given the impression that the report itself was not attractive. My comments are that the newsprint format is not attractive. Diana and Walt, the graphic designer, have done a good job of collecting stories and telling our stories. It's just, it looks like it's a throwaway when it's on newspaper print. And the library is more important than newsprint. So it's not the report itself.
It's the form, not the substance.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. If there are no further questions for Virginia, let's move on. I have been talking informally with Abigail and with Kip and with several of the, with all the board members about how we can become a more attractive board in terms of our structure and flexibility in looking at best practices. Right now, our bylaws specify the number of meetings that we have, the times of those meetings, and the dates of those meetings. And in looking through, there's a memo in the this month's package, which presumably all of our board members have looked at. None of those requirements, there are no requirements for those meeting times, dates, and the number of meetings to be in our bylaws. It can be a resolution which would allow us some flexibility in terms of new members that come on in the future, who perhaps can't meet at 8:30 in the morning. In order to change that meeting time, we'd have to have an amendment of our bylaws. It would provide some flexibility so that we could once a year set by resolution the number of meetings, the times and dates of those meetings. And for example, and I outlined some pros and cons, but as an example, if we knew that the third Thursday of the month happened to be Thanksgiving one year, a priori, we could make we wouldn't have to have a bylaws change to change that meeting. I would like to, I know how I feel about it, but I don't know how any of the other board members feel about it. And so I'd like to really open it up for your all's reaction to, is this something we should consider further? And if so, what are some of the concerns and or positives and negatives that you guys see?
I'll begin. I wrote an email in favor of it. I'm supportive of it. I think that based on everything I'm seeing in other work that I do, and this flexibility is so critical to so many people these days, that the resolution approach with maybe annual review of is it appropriate, and the flexibility that gives a board member to be able to input to that, I think is really valuable. So I like this approach.
Dale, do you have thoughts on this?
I agree. I think you're on the right track there, Peter, and we need to basically take it out of the bylaws and insert language that allows us to do a resolution. I would suggest that we do it at the beginning of the fiscal year, because that's when the new board members would be seated. And so it would make more sense to do it then, to, you know, get everybody's schedule under consideration than waiting then until the first of the year. So
I happen to share that thought, but I just I didn't know whether the concept in general was one where that people were in favor of. I did want to, I forgot to mention, we have a fiduciary duty to approve vouchers every month. And so this would not change the need for a short but quorum-based meeting every month to approve vouchers. Sean, do you have some thoughts on this?
Pardon me, I'm fully in support of it. The one concern that I had, and I mean, I feel like a brief meeting to approve vouchers in my role or for any future treasurer would not be an issue. My concern is with, you know, and it's mentioned in your notes about the lack of predictability. And I think if maybe we codify or make a little more clear, you know, that you know, a meeting will be announced, you know, in some range of time, be it a month or so many weeks. I think if we make that clear, I think everybody, you know, it would serve to provide some clarity on that for the community and for board members who, you know, have obligations that they have to deal with as well.
Right. Thank you. Nina, do you have any thoughts on this?
Nothing to add that no one else has already said.
Okay. Abigail, what is the process for our working through this and getting it into a proper, I presume we have to post this as a bylaws change. Could you just help us remember what the procedure is, please?
Sure. So for the bylaws to be amended, we'd have to draft the amendment on what you folks determine you want your bylaws to be. And I would recommend that you maintain some sort of threshold or floor, so to speak, in your bylaw, X number of meetings a year as a low bar minimum threshold. And then once it's finalized, it needs to be formally presented to the board and voted on. And then it runs for, I can't remember, I think you guys are only 30 days, not 45. And then after it's run, in order to take public comment and give everyone an adequate chance to raise any issues or concerns, then you vote on it again and it becomes adopted. So then the bylaw would get changed first, and then I'd have to think if even maybe at the same meeting that the bylaw was being voted on to be formally adopted after the notice period, we could probably vote on the resolution at the same time for, you know, the rest of this year, hypothetically.
Thank you. Is it everybody's sense then that we should move forward towards having something to look at and approve at the March board meeting? And if so, we could talk through in between now and then, we could get something very specific to vote on put together. Is that everybody's sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Then I will take that on and communicate by email to everybody in between, and we can work that through. Thank you.
I did have one thought just now, is that given our changing of dates and times, then I think it becomes a burden, a nice burden to us to make sure that people do know the time. So when people write in for comment, replying and always including the next meeting date if they wanted to do that, or putting something up in the library, a place where people can see the next board meeting, or I don't know, maybe the staff probably has better ideas than I do on how to communicate that. But I think that becomes something that we need to make sure that we do a good job of communicating to people, not just making them, I mean, when I'm angry, I'll find when the meeting is, you know?
Well, I mean, sorry, Dale, I'll get there. Just go ahead, Dale. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Well, I just wanted to say that, you know, we are bound to meet once a month for the vouchers with at least 3 of us, and that makes it an official meeting, which means that we would need to allow public comment. We would, you know, it doesn't mean that we get to shortcut the process. It hopefully means that we would have some shorter meetings, but we would still have to, you know, do all the relevant parts, and it would have to be regularly scheduled. So whatever language we come up with is going to have to reflect that.
That's correct. And I think the other idea is it's set it and forget it in our resolution with an exceptions management that would come out, as opposed to, so if somebody who joins this board cannot meet at 8:30 in the morning, but can only meet at 7 o'clock at night on a Friday night, and that's something that we want to do, I think that's what we would vote in resolution, and really have a set of calendar that's set for the entire year at that time. And if something needed to change, we would do it. It's really trying to take this regularity of scheduling out of the bylaws so that we don't have to change it for new boards that get seated, and giving some flexibility.
Right.
I have a little concern also in that, you know, we need to make very clear that this monthly voucher meeting sticks to that. I could see a situation where a little creep might slip into that, and it's like, oh, well, we're going to have a quorum, so let's discuss matter X, and then we just are ending up having a de facto board meeting every month. So I think we need to offer some clarity on that as well.
That hopefully won't be an issue with for us, our currently constituted board, but we obviously can't speak to future members, and is also the discipline of of Kip and his staff to make sure that we stay controlled and to the point.
Yeah,
Good.
I
It's a-
think really specific definition of the voucher meeting, like Sean's suggesting, and really getting into the nitty gritties of what is the agenda at the voucher meeting, and because it sure sounds like we could end up with 2 meetings doubling up instead of reducing our load. So let's make sure that we're not.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to say that we can't do a board meeting at the same time concurrent or with the voucher meeting.
That's correct.
There's nothing that prevents that. So that might become,
If we had 12 meetings a year, we can have the vouchers at the same time. If in a by resolution, we're going to only have, because it's a reasonably light year, 8, 9, 10 meetings, then you'd need to have, we would have the vouchers concurrent with that, but we'd have two other meetings for the vouchers, whatever that is. Yeah.
I would defer to Abigail with this, but if we're going to have a majority of the board present, regardless of what you call the meeting, it's a regular meeting, a voucher meeting, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's an official meeting if you have a quorum. So I think the key here is the agenda,
Right.
to try to keep control of the agenda rather than trying to say that we're having different kinds of meetings, because legally speaking, a meeting is a meeting is a meeting, unless I'm wrong, Abigail, but. So we just need to get an iron grip on that agenda, which I think is what we're talking about here.
And I'm in heated agreement. I mean,
Yeah.
all right, well, thank you. I will work with all of us in between this meeting and the next meeting to put something together that seems to be reflective of our all the comments that we've heard today.
Peter, might I, just for
Please.
a minute? So yeah, Dale's absolutely correct. I would encourage, although it's not necessary, to, as you're thinking this through, to give me, I'll draft what you guys come up with, but I would aim, even though it's not critical, to continue to sort of try and stick to the sort of third Thursday concept for the, whether it goes in the bylaw or the resolution, I'm not sure, to give it that predictability that was discussed, although no doubt if people are upset, where you guys are going to get told that is in the grocery store, not in meetings. And then, but it does give you flexibility. So for example, historic preservation this past year, they've always had their meetings at 7 p.m., which I love, because I love staying up till 9 o'clock at night listening about historic preservation. But at one point they were having trouble, again, recruiting board members because they had a few working parents, with small children, and the 7 p.m. did not work for people with small children, and that's dinner time and bedtime. So they switched to 4 for a brief period. And then that person went off the board and they went back to 7. They did it a little too abruptly, but that gave them that sort of flexibility. It does also enable you every year to look at the holidays, as was mentioned, and you can look at when maybe your budget, you're going to have a meeting over the budget. But it's also true what Dale said, it's controlling your own agenda, right? So if you have a meeting, you might know in your heads or even in your resolution that hypothetically you still have a meeting every month, but every other month is limited to just reviewing vouchers as necessary, and you actively try and make sure nothing else goes on that agenda. But I need to look into the rules and the background, and then I'll provide some information on a voucher meeting, as the Board of County Commissioners calls it, which originally started out to be just that, just to approve vouchers, and grew into an
Oh,
entire
Lord.
What's
different
happened?
creature,
Yeah.
as if Mark is still on, can speak to. So I'll look into a little more, because even if you call it, if it's a meeting, it doesn't matter. If it's a meeting, voucher or otherwise.
Yeah.
So I'll take a look at some of those issues.
Thank you, Abigail. I'll be back in touch with you next week. Okay. Any more discussion? All right, thank you. Board updates. Grace, Strategic Planning Subcommittee.
Oh, okay. I thought that we were going to get a report out from Kip on board members who he's aligned with the board. Is that somewhere on today's agenda, or is that going to be in another meeting, Kip?
I thought I would address it here.
Is this a
I'm
good place? Okay.
I'm
you.
continuing to work through the exercise in the manual that we've chosen to make sure that I'm choosing or recommending the right makeup of members. And also in my meeting with Laura Saltow at the Teton Literacy Center, she and I discussed strategic planning and the desire to have a representative from either the Latinx community or the communities of color here in town. And she did kindly provide me with a list of Latinx families specifically that she thinks would be interested in participating. So I've started reaching out to some of those on that list just to have a conversation and see where I land. So I would hope not by next week's meeting, but by March meeting, I will have a recommendation of who, and I think maybe the board planning committee, we should meet sometime in March before our meeting to go over this.
Do you think, Kip, it makes sense to have you and Grace and me sit down in the next, either tomorrow or Tuesday, since Monday's a holiday, just make sure we're all coordinated, or is that too soon, or do you have too much on your plate?
I would say it's too soon. The budget is taking priority at this point.
Okay.
So, Kip, the worksheets for the library strategic planning. So you're actually working through doing those properly and getting what is the nature and the knowledge or expertise that we're looking for?
Yes.
And you're bouncing that against the people that you're potentially nominating to be on the committee?
Yes.
And so you're working through that. I was afraid we'd jump that step. So I'm really glad to hear you're doing that.
I mean, some of the participants are a given, the foundation, the friends, that's sort of a de facto member. But yet, no, the other steps I am going through and trying to make sure.
Okay, you're working through the worksheet, through the book, the process that was recommended. Excellent. And there is one thing, as I went through that again, we have not previously talked about having the State Library Board involved. And they're kind of one of the stakeholders too. So would you just put that into the hopper as you think about what expertise and participation we need? I don't know if it's viable at all, but it just jumped out at me as something we need to think about. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I'm not sure I've ever had the state library anywhere participate. So, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be. I'll think about it.
Just consider it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So we can put off a meeting on that until early March?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you.
Any further questions on strategic planning? Dale, could you give us a brief update on diversity subcommittee?
Yes, we are having a training today, which is good. And I have talked to the DEI collective again, and they have their training that they offer. They have told me that they are not prepared at this point in terms of personnel to do a specially tailored presentation for the library. However, they will be opening up their course offering, which is called Getting Real About Whiteness again, and we can sign up as individuals. And I did check their website today and I did not see any way to sign up. So I'm assuming it's not quite there yet, but I think it's imminent. So I believe the issue is, you know, if we want to do this, we're going to have to do it on our own. It is a fairly sizable commitment. And we'll have to do it as individuals. However, I do think there's a lot of value to it. There is also an awful lot of good information about diversity and how to achieve it across the board in your, no pun intended, in your library, on the ALA website. And the state organization is also working on some new directions and policies and information about this to help around our state. So there's a lot of good professional information from in the professional library organizations out there. And I would urge everyone to take a look because I think we can do some self-education. And I'm going to keep looking for other opportunities. And if anybody sees a good one, please let me know.
Thank you, Dale. It's an important effort. I think it's something that, to the extent that we'd have to do it individually, that we can coordinate if we all agreed on one program, that would be, and if it's the getting real about whiteness, that'd be great. And it's something I think we should have some more information by our March board meeting. I would think it would be very helpful.
And I'm hoping to get some information in the next couple of days, which I will send around. And I'm assuming it will also be on their website, the DEI Collective, Jackson Hole. So those of the public that are, you know, listening today that are interested, I believe that scheduling of this new go round of that training is coming very soon.
Super. Thanks, Dale. Sean, IT subcommittee.
IT subcommittee. So the IT subcommittee effort is really something that's kind of split into two parts. One being the assessment of current needs. The other being a sort of projection of future capabilities and things like that, things on the horizon. With some kind of further thought about that, the current needs and current status of things is really something that should be kind of driven by staff. I'm happy to provide my input on that. And then in terms of sort of future assessments and projections and things like that of where things are going, I'm planning to kind of write up a report on that in a non-binding way with input of our other subcommittee members. My current bandwidth with our kind of meeting load coming up is pushing that back a little bit, but that is where we're at with that.
Sean, I'm curious about assessment of current needs. Do we believe there's an issue that needs to be addressed, or is that library management stuff ongoing? How is the board involved in the current needs? Are you talking about towards budgeting, towards, I don't understand the current needs. I see the forecasting in the future, but how are we getting involved in today's day-to-day issues with the library, or are there issues that need to be addressed?
I think, there are always, it's procurement, it's maintenance, it's putting out fires, it's things like that. But I think as a board, we need to have kind of a light hand with that because none of us are in there daily working on those things. In my professional experience, I've dealt with all of that stuff. And again, I'm happy to say, oh, I think this, or oh, I think that. But I don't think it's my or our place to say, do it this way. So, and we need, to offer any kind of suggestion, I need to reach out and get a little more get a better feel of how things are going on the ground with that.
So when you talk about we, Sean, is we, you and someone from IT, you and Kip, who is we?
You mean in terms of assessing what's
in the
going on
IT?
right now?
Yeah, and what you just described.
I mean, I would say the subcommittee and the staff, IT staff, and Kip, provided his ability to be involved with that.
Okay, so you're recommending that it be pushed out a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, my broad assessment is that things are going pretty well. Certainly, there are always issues, but that is how it is in any organization. But I think those issues are managed well.
Yeah. So Sean, I think you're more than aware that the IT manager at county is one of the gaps out there. I would just say that, somehow, well, I don't know. Involvement with them needs to be included, and I'm not sure how you can do that for a while. But
yeah, I mean, it's it's like the proverbial iceberg moving through the sea. It somehow gets taken care of just by sheer necessity. But I don't think anything we say about how or what should be done is going to modify the course of the iceberg. It's just going to continue moving.
Well, I thought you were referring to the part of the iceberg analogy that only 10% is above the surface of the water and the other 90% is below.
It's probably both.
Grace, are you okay?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just needed some understanding.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me move forward then. Housing Task Force, I don't know, Kip or Nina, are you going to address this?
I wrote a synopsis of very little detail, but in my director's report, maybe Nina would like to add something specific.
Well, Kip's in charge, but I mean, I think we're moving forward and really trying to discover what the needs are, or where, if we spent money, where it could be most useful, and what the direction is that would really help the library grow and recruit and keep employees. So
I guess the one thought I had reading the memo was it's always easy to look at our short-term staff views, and which is terrific, but not to forget that 5 years down the road, we may have a different set of perspectives. And so to keep that longer term, because it's always easy to push something down the road if we don't have an immediate need, but it only gets more expensive. So I would encourage everybody to continue to have an open mind about looking at 5 to 7 years down the road, what might be our needs and how might they be addressed.
As an aside, the county currently has 2 units that are available to employees of the county, and it's probably somewhat more secure housing, at least a little bit longer term. And we do have staff who are applying for those units right now. So there is certainly a need right now for something that feels more secure to them. So.
Well, but Kip, and I mean, I look at your own situation where you've come in a year ago, not quite a year ago. Gosh, I'm sure it seems to you it's been 3 years, but and you've got 3 years in your housing, but
I'm not even sure 3 years is guaranteed. It's the maximum limit. There could be a greater need that somebody comes, I don't know, the new HR director comes on board and needs housing. They might say my lease is up.
Well, I would, you know, something that gives more of a sense of permanence to the permanent staff is
Yeah.
something that I mean, we all, I think, feel very a need for. So thank everybody, including, you know, the foundation and the friends and everybody else on the task force staff for continuing this effort. Are you all meeting again? When's your next meeting?
I believe next week.
Okay, thank you.
And Grace has a question.
Yes, can I please? In the meeting minutes from our last board meeting, I like the way Dale captured it, that Mark Barron urged the board to collaborate with community partners in the housing effort, as he feels this has historically produced better results, recall. And as I looked at your minutes, I don't really clearly see that you're addressing community partnership. Maybe something you could bring up at your next meeting.
You lost me, Grace. What do you mean? Sorry.
No, that at our last meeting, Dale, Mark Barron and
No,
he's
I
not
got
here.
that part.
Okay,
What do
so
you want me to do about it? That I'm confused.
no, it's not you, it's the housing task force.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, the housing task force to include something consciously to look at community collaboration.
I would say that we did have that discussion and that
Did
we
you?
are doing that.
Okay, I might have missed it, but good.
Moving on, the BOCC quarterly meeting. On our calendar is an in-person or Zoom meeting on February 28th with the BOCC for our quarterly update. I spoke with Mark Barron a couple weeks ago. The last two quarterly updates, we have provided them with apparently enough of a summary written that it has engendered no questions at the last two Zoom meetings when we've been all present. He agreed that if I can put together, and I will circulate it, a quarterly update in written form and get it to them before their February 28th meeting, they would let us know whether we are in need of being on their Zoom meeting to answer any questions. But he was very comfortable turning the quarterly reporting into a written report and making ourselves available for questions should it be needed, as opposed to being on call for that meeting.
To that voucher meeting.
Yes. Is everybody comfortable with that? Yes, Dale.
I would just say that in the past, we would have benefited, I believe, by more communication with the county commission rather than less. And I am not totally comfortable for us to be heading in that direction again. On one hand, it's good that there aren't a lot of questions. On the other hand, it'd be nice if they'd ask a few questions, because I'm sure we could, add to their understanding of how things are going. And I do understand that they are horribly busy. I get that part, but I just want to make sure that we have a really open communication with our county commission on a regular basis where people feel free to comment or not. Because I think it's too easy to become just another report. Quite frankly.
I don't disagree with that. I would take one slight correction. We didn't in the past produce quarterly reports for the BOCC. There was mainly an annual report. So we are actually in a more regular reporting format than we've ever done before. I agree with you that it's more communication is better because it helps to prevent misunderstandings. I am very cognizant, though, of the other. I'm not a working I'm not working anymore, but that's not true of all of our other board members. So it does take some time out of commitment for us, and I'm just cognizant of everybody's time. So if you will allow me to try this, I would think that, and underline that we'd make ourselves available. I actually think it might get the BOCC to read before their meeting our report, hopefully. I don't know. I just am conscious of our time. That's all. And I don't disagree with you. I think that more communication is always better. And it's set up so that we don't all have to be there. And I'm happy to continue to be willing to be in person on that Zoom voucher meeting if the sense of the board is that that should go on in person, and that, but I don't think it's necessary for all of us to be on there if that's the case.
Abigail, I think, had something to say.
Yeah, I was just gonna pipe in from 30 years of watching the dynamic of different elected officials and different boards in my years in Jackson, and no disrespect to the current Board of County Commissioners. You already sort of hinted at this, Peter. It wasn't clear to me right away. I would always make sure there's at least one of you there. Just because they say there aren't going to be questions, you know, the reality is some of them might not read the report till 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, and then all of a sudden there have been so many times where we didn't think anything was going to be an issue, both when I was before the board as on behalf of a party, as well as now advising them. And all of a sudden something comes up out of left field. So I would just always make sure, not all of you, but at least one of you are always there. So.
Isn't there always a Zoom component to these meetings now?
Yes,
So
there
you
is.
can
There is now.
participate virtually, which is low,
Mhm.
the lowest of participation commitment. So
I'm happy to continue as is. I just I was trying to be
Yeah.
provide some outs for.
And it's to be honest, it's not just so you can be there to answer any questions they might have. If there's any discussion, you want someone from your team there listening to that, even if they never direct a question your way in a voucher meeting, because typically they don't ask a question, you don't necessarily have an opportunity to speak, to address it, but you definitely want to know what conversations they're having about you.
Sure.
No disrespect to my wonderful Board of County Commissioners that I love.
Okay, well, I will happy to take that advice. I will continue to keep our Zoom schedule on, and anybody on the rest of the library board who'd like to join me are more than welcome. And we will either have an unofficial meeting if there's only one other person, and if there's everybody else. I would like to, what's everybody's sense of protecting Kip's time? Because Kip has been a part of that as well. And it's really our report to the board of county commissioners.
What does Kip think?
I actually don't mind going. I think it's nice to have my face in front of the commissioners as well. So I would continue to go.
Okay, terrific. Tri-board quarterly meeting. We have March 3rd. I have asked Sean to join me in that meeting representing our board. Of course, Kip's there. I have a couple of topics that I would like to at least present at that meeting. One is our strategic planning process, and that's probably from Kip as well. And then 2 is an update on the housing committee work. Are there other subjects that we would like discussed at the tri-board meeting?
Should we provide some information about our budget submission, maybe? I mean, that's something that affects everyone, so. And at that point, we won't know, but we will have submitted it. So we could certainly sort of give them the short course, you know.
I think that's a good idea. That's probably the most important thing for all 3 organizations right now. All right. Then I will put together a little, Kip and I will put our heads together and just send you a little note, if that makes sense. All right, thank you. Are there other matters from board members, library staff, and supporting organizations? Dale, yeah.
Yes. I'd just like to remind everyone that our board will have 2 seats coming up to be filled, mine and Grace. And irrespective of what we do or don't do, I would like to encourage people to consider an application for the library board. I think it's really important to have a strong slate. And I also know from experience that sometimes it can take several go-rounds to get on these county boards. So that if somebody is really interested in doing it, perhaps not this time, but in the future, which would be next year, I would encourage them to go ahead and throw their name in the hopper, go through the process. It's a good learning experience. And like I say, it can take you a couple of, even 3 times to get on some of these boards. So I just wanted to throw that out there to make the public aware that the people that are listening, that this is coming up. They usually put out the applications a month to 6 weeks ahead of time, which would be May, because the persons have to be seated by July 1st. So it's just a reminder that that's looming, and it will be here before we know it.
Thank you.
And Dale, I'd just briefly like to add that the public can sit in on the interviews with the board and the county commissioners, with the individuals, applicants, and the county commissioners when the time comes.
Mhm.
That's another education
Right.
opportunity too.
Okay, thank you. Any other matters? Sean, did you raise your hand? I'm sorry. Okay, then let's move on to the payment of library vouchers. Sean, I know it's been an interesting process, but please go ahead.
Thanks, Peter. As you alluded to at the beginning of the meeting, staff is still kind of getting the new processes with the county smoothed out. And I wanted to acknowledge the hard work that Stella did, working to get those vouchers printed up. Not all of them were completed at the time that I went over last night. So we got through a pretty substantial stack, and we're going to hold the remainder of them for approval at our budget meeting next week. Everything that I looked at in the currently processed vouchers looked a-okay. So I would move that we approve the currently signed vouchers, and I don't think we need to make a motion to approve the rest of next week, do we, Peter?
No, I don't think we do. Kip, what are the outstanding vouchers that have not been reviewed, just so we can understand what we're talking
I
about?
think there's only 5 of them. 3 of them are to our materials vendors, and all of those include expenses that are for the foundation to pay. So we've been trying to figure out the process of how to extract the foundation piece from that, and I believe we have a solution now. And so we'll have those 3 big vouchers for next week. And then there were 2 that were just in the process of being printed
Okay.
while Sean was here,
So-
right after Sean had left. So there's probably 5 vouchers or so.
Okay. So your proposal, Sean, is to approve the vouchers that have been signed? Because
Currently reviewed and signed.
you didn't sign, and to defer until next week's meeting, the remaining 5 vouchers or so, and we'll approve those then. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. May I have a motion? Well, did you make a motion to do that?
I did. I would move that we approve those
I will
vouchers.
second that. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. I will make a motion to adjourn this meeting at 9:45, which is an hour and 15 minutes. I don't think we've ever been that quick, but if we have the budget to talk about. Anyway, is there a second to my motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you all very much. And we'll talk with you next week.